everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to a fun video that I've seen this trend go around on actually Instagram, where people post their first book and then their favorite book by a specific author, and I thought that would be fun to sit down and do a video of that. I'm going to talk about a lot of different authors. Some of these people you have heard of, obviously you've heard me talk about these people, but I just really wanted to sit down and talk about them some more. Before we dive into the video, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, and that is Stephanie Rose. So she has a new book out called Second Time's the Charm, which is a second chance romance, which we all love. I'm a huge fan of second chance romances, one of my favorite tropes to read. So in this book, our main male character, he goes back to his small town. He goes from uncle to father in just a night, and he goes back to the small town to take care of his little girl. And at his 20th high school reunion, he runs into his ex, the only girl who's really ever had his heart. The only thing that he can offer his ex after they parted ways 20 years ago is an apology and some friendship. He's not in the right mindset to start a relationship with her, but things get really twisted and lines start to blur when she is actually his daughter's soccer coach. And so not only are they forced to spend time together, but they start to have this like friendship that they've had previously. You know, like you just fall back into that easy friendship. And really after one night of them just like reminiscing and having a moment, you know, they start their relationship back up again, because at that point he's like, at this time I have wasted so many years without her in my bed, and I'm not gonna, you know, waste another moment without her. And that's when their romance starts to really take off. If you're looking for a second chance romance, pick up Second Time's a Charm by Stephanie Rose. I'll have the link in the description. I'll have the link to pick this book up in the description box below, but thank you so much for sponsoring this video. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, first author is Katherine CS. I love Katherine, okay? I love her books. She does have Fragile Sanctuary coming out, or is already out and pre-filming a little bit, but I do want everyone to go pick up that book. But my first book by her was Tattered Stars. Wow, okay. There's this little bit of suspense element. I'm not usually into that, but we'll keep going with it. And then I read the whole series, and I think I picked up Shattered Sea at Book Bonanza, and then I went back and read like the first 4 books, including Shattered Sea and the Tattered and Torn series, in like 2 weeks or something like that. So yeah, that was my first book by her. But then Fragile Sanctuary is actually my favorite, but it's also her newest book. I don't know what she put into this book. I really do not know. But the way that she wrote this book was just so, just from start to finish, so engrossing, so emotional, like you connect with the characters. And she does write a lot of emotional books, but for some reason this book, it hit for me. Like Anson and Rhodes, their story is just amazing. If you were to ask me before I read Fragile Sanctuary, Shattered Sea was my favorite, just because I love the chronic pain rep in that book. So good. The next author is Nikki Castle. So Nikki Castle doesn't have the longest backlist, but I do love her. I love her dearly. I think she is an amazing person and such like a badass woman. Like I love just chatting with her. So the first book I read by her was 5 Rounds in 2023, at the beginning of 2023, because I remember it was right before 2 Fights came out. And now she has 5 books out in that series, and the 5th book that recently just came out was 4th Degree. This is an age gap coach athlete. Oh my god, it has an adorable puppy. I loved this book. So 2 Fights was my favorite, okay? 2 Fights has been my favorite since I read that, but I don't know, 4th Degree really took me by surprise, because I started crying at the end of the book, just because if you are an older sibling, I'll say this, if you're an older sibling and you're the oldest child and you have younger siblings, whether it's one or many, you just have this like automatic pressure put on yourself. Like you put it on yourself as the oldest child. I don't know what it is. My parents never did that to me, but like for some reason it just was like put on to me. Like I don't know, I put it on myself. I take care of my brother, I take care of my parents, I take care of a lot of different people in my life who I hold dear, and I love doing that, right? And that part just hit me, because she's not only the oldest child, she's taking care of her teenage brother, which I do have a teenage brother. She's taking care of her mother. Her father passed away, so she's taking care of her mother who's sick. She's also trying to go to school. She's also just trying to find such a small time for herself, to take care of herself, even if it's just an hour or two. And that's kind of what led her to the gym. But such a good book. Found Family is amazing in this series. I love it so much, but I love her dearly. Now, this is gonna actually be funny. Gianna Darling. I love Gianna. Gianna's beautiful woman, right? Inside and out, okay? But my first book I read by her was the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. Technically, it was When Heroes Fall, because at that point, the second book, When Villains Rise, wasn't even out yet. I had to wait for that book. But I read that back in June of 2021. So it's been 3 years I've been reading her, almost to the month. And let me tell you, the Anti-Heroes in Love duet is still my favorite series by her, favorite book. Like, it's a, you know, the HEA of the characters is in the second book. I love the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. I have read that probably 6 times now since reading it 3 years ago. I will just randomly pick up the audiobook, put it on when I don't really have anything to read or I'm not really in the mood for anything, and I will dive right in and devour that book. I love it. I love it so much. Elena Lombardi is someone I would love to sit down and have a conversation with in person, but I love her. I love her. I love Elena. I love Dante. I love the story. It's so beautiful. I related to it. It's amazing. I have read everything that she's ever written, and that's still my favorite. Between like the 3 years, I've read everything that she's ever written, and Anti-Heroes is still my favorite. Now, I wanted to mention Elsie Silver. Now, Elsie, I've been reading since August 2022. I read Flawless. I went Flawless, and then I read some of her backlist series in the, not Chestnut Springs. I forgot the other series. Anyway, Gold Rush Ranch. I read a couple books in that, but my favorite by her is Wild Love, and that just so happens to be the more recent one. Now, before that, it was either Reckless or Heartless. Those two are my favorite as well. But Wild Love is like if Reckless and Heartless had a baby. And put those two together. This is this book. It is single dad in like a very different way, a little bit of an age gap, brother's best friend. He's a billionaire. He comes back to the small town to build this record studio. I freaking devoured it. Loved it, devoured it, absolutely loved it. Okay. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of Elsie Silver. I've given like one of her books 3 stars, and that should be, it was Hopeless, and it just wasn't the best for me, but that's okay. We can't love every single book. I mean, we can, but like that was just one that I was like, didn't hit the same way, okay? The next author is Emily Henry. I've only read 3 books by Emily Henry, and the first one I read was Book Lovers in June 2022. But her most recent release, Funny Story, really hit me too. It's one of those things of right person, but you have all of these life responsibilities that like holds you back from being with that person, and to me that always gets me. I get so emotional. I teared up in that book. Now, I would say that Happy Place was my favorite, but I do want to read People We Meet on Vacation and Book Lovers. I'm bringing those 2 on vacation with me during the summer. I'm going to Hawaii, and I plan to relax and read a lot, and I do think that those would be perfect, you know, like books to not only vlog while I'm on vacation, but just read and see if I love them, because a lot of people love those over her newer stuff. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a baby when it comes to reading Emily Henry, because I've only read 3, but I did want to mention her because I do like her. I do like her stuff. Okay, I have to mention Sarah J. Maas. Okay, I've read everything that she's written too, minus the Catwoman thing, because no, I'm not reading the Catwoman thing. But I read ACOTAR in October of 2020, and my favorite is actually Air of Fire. This is, I sat with this for a little while. I love Sarah J. Maas. I love a lot of the characters, and when it comes to picking my favorite book, I can't just do based on like the feeling that I had at that moment, because like I cried while reading House of Flame and Shadow, right? But when I think about the characters and which characters I love, Aelin is one of my favorite characters of all time, and you really see a change in her in Air of Fire, as well as the love interest. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but if you know, you know. And I just think Air of Fire is so pivotal in the Throne of Glass series that it's one of my favorites. Like, I don't think I would ever reread the whole series. I say I want to, but I probably won't. But I would reread Air of Fire just because I love it so much. Now, ask me tomorrow and it might change. But as of now, Air of Fire is my favorite. So, oh, I want to mention Anna Huang. Anna Huang has a lot of books out. She's still like relatively new, as well as like a couple other authors I'm going to talk about. But I first read Twisted Love in May of 2021, which is actually funny to me that I feel like I've been reading her longer, but it's only been like 2 years, 3 years. But King of Greed is my favorite. I love A Marriage in Trouble when it's done right, and I think the way that she wrote Alessandra and Dominic is just so beautiful. I cried in that book. The first like 6 chapters I cried. I don't know what it was, but it just like got me. I loved it. It was perfection. That book was perfection, okay? I want to mention Liese Kleypas because I don't talk about a lot of historical authors, historical romance authors, but Liese Kleypas is actually one of my favorites. And the first book I read by her was Lady Sophia's Lover. I forgot the last word of the title. And that was in August of 2020. That was actually, funny story, That was my first historical romance readathon I ever did. I think that was like the second one that they ever put on. Jess, Lacey, and Liese ever put on the historical romance readathon. It was like their second one. I was like, I'm gonna join in. My first historical was Beverly Jenkins, one of her books, Captured by Beverly Jenkins. So then I read Lady Sophia's Lover because it was their group book. But my favorite is Devil in Winter. I love Devil in Winter. I've read it twice now, 3 times now. I read it a couple times and I love that book. Absolutely. I love that book so much. It's so good. It's so just enticing right from the beginning, and it really like just grabs you. So yeah, I don't know what it was about that book in particular of why I love it so much, but I do. I love it. I devoured that. Now, I want to mention Lauren Asher because Lauren Asher is very popular. She has a lot of books out. She got picked up. All of her books I think are picked up now. So I read Redeemed back in September of 2021. This is a disability rep in the book. It's a Formula One series. It's actually the 4th book in this series, but I read them out of order. You can read them out of order. Now my favorite to this day is Wrecked, which is the 3rd book in that series. The mental health representation in that book is unlike anything I've read, I think, before. I don't know what it was, but I absolutely devoured it. I cried. I was like sobbing like that, crying just because I just saw myself in our hero and what he was going through with his anxiety and stuff like that, and it really just struck me as like, oh my god, I love this book so much. So had to mention that one. The next author is Chloe Liese. You guys know I love Chloe Liese. It's not going to come as a surprise what my favorite book by that author is going to be, but my first one was Only When It's Us. I read that in December of 2020, and then I remember on New Year's Day I picked up Always Only You by Chloe Liese, which is my favorite, and I devoured it. Devoured that book. It's my favorite book. It is one of the only books that I think that the RA representation, rheumatoid arthritis representation, which I have in that book, is so spot on, and I loved it so much. I've said this before, when I read that book in January of 2021, it changed my life for the better. It made me embrace my chronic illness more. It made me find like the community in the book community, like the disabled and chronically ill people in the community that I just like bonded with. It made me like really be an advocate for, you know, chronic illness and disability in romance books, and it made me want to talk about them more. So yeah, like I said, that changed my life for the better, obviously. But Candi Ryan, I love Candi Ryan. So I actually read Long Shot back in February of 2019. So I read her a while ago, years ago. And it's interesting because I wanted to like continue with the series, but Long Shot really hit me. Like, she talks about a lot of things in that book that hit me just a little too much. Like, it hits just a little too close to home, you know what I mean? And I was like, you know what, no, I'm not going to continue. But Real is my favorite. I did a book box with Real in it. I was able to pick that book and I love it. It's near and dear to my heart because of the chronic illness in that book, and I loved it. So yeah, Real, absolute favorite. Love her. Now I did want to throw in a couple of like newer authors that I've discovered, but also authors I don't always talk about. So that's Candi Steiner. I read The Wrong Game back in December of 2018. I actually gave it 5 stars. I really love that book. And then I decided to read a lot of her backlist. I've read a lot of her books, but my favorite has to be A Love Letter to Whiskey. I mean, I feel like a lot of people would say A Love Letter to Whiskey. I was gonna go with Blindside by, you know, Candi Steiner, which is in her like sports series, but the angstiness in A Love Letter to Whiskey just really does something, okay? I don't know what it is, but it really does something, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved that one. I have 2 authors left, and they're both like taboo forbidden romance queens. First one is Luchia Franco, and let me tell you, I read Balance in November 2019, technically before it was like re-edited, so I had a lot of problems with that book. She was too young, it was too wild, too much, too taboo for me. I love that woman, but it was just, I had too many things where I was like, this is not a book for me, and that's okay, type of a thing. But she re-edited it, and I did reread it, and I liked it. But my favorite by her is Hush Hush. I do have some other books I want to read by her that I haven't got to, some of her newer releases. But Hush Hush, if you're looking for like ultimate age gap, he's 21 years older than her, the whole like billionaire has a lot of money, sugar baby vibes, that's this book. I fucking loved it, and I actually believed their romance at the end, which doesn't always happen, but I loved it. Absolutely love Hush Hush. I've read it twice. Oh, love it so much. But the last author I want to talk about is QB Tyler, the queen, one of the forbidden romance queens. So my first book was Forget Me Not by QB Tyler. I read that back in 2021, in April of 2021, because my friend Jess at Peace Love Books read that, loved it, and I was like, yo, I'm gonna give it a try. And it was good. I was like, okay, I like it. It's not super taboo, not super forbidden, but my favorite to this day, my favorite by her, What Was Meant to Be. I don't know what the fuck she did in this book, why JP speaks to me on like another level, but oh my god, I love him so much. I absolutely love JP. Love him to pieces, literally love him to pieces. So if you want a good age gap, like dad, I think it's dad's best friend, it's her godfather basically, What Was Meant to Be is perfect. What Was Meant to Be is absolutely amazing. But those are all my first versus favorites by a lot of my favorite authors. If you guys want to see me, you know, go deep dive into some of the books I read in like 2016 and then tell you my favorite like oldies, and then, you know, see if I've read any of their newer stuff and what was my favorite, you can let me know in the comments down below. I would love to know. Once again, I want to thank Stephanie Rose for sponsoring this video. Make sure you pick up Second Time's a Charm, Small Town, Second Chance Romance, Single Dad, him learning the ropes, her being the soccer coach to his daughter, all of the good times in a small town. Of course, there's like meddling friends and stuff like that, but thank you so much to Stephanie Rose for sponsoring this video. If you made it this far, drop me a sunflower emoji, just because I'm wearing my sunflower sweater and it's Mother's Day and I'm about to go to dinner with my mom. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content for me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.